Coin traders, what is going on? Thanks for joining me for the show. Been a little bit, but we are back, especially after a pretty big lull in crypto space. And so ever since hitting our trend high, been extremely long, boring sideways action. But right now, lots of signs right now in the crypto space that are shaping up to be bullish. So we are going to be talking about them in the show today, specifically with this Bitcoin chart. So specifically right now, one of the things on the longer term structures that we want to look at, and I'm actually going to flip over into the weekly chart for this, is the fact that we are now looking at a complete break and change in structure on this longer term. So since we are in the longer weekly term, it does take a lot longer to play out, and that's exactly what we're seeing, especially after 4 months since hitting our trend high. So had our high, low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, higher low. Confirmed that, and then now we are actually looking at a higher high here. So previously we were looking at a high on this chart of 65,050. Now we are looking at a current high right now of 65,865, and also we still have about halfway to go until this weekly candle closes here. So as you can imagine, this is a pretty good sign, especially since we have been holding this structure like we talked about for 4 months now. So to actually have a break in this longer term structure is extremely good and bullish for the longer term. And so especially looking over here at the fear and greed index, we know that over this period, we actually saw fear get established. Obviously, we weren't in the extremely lower levels that we have seen previously on the major parts of bear markets. But because we were actually down in that fear section, we did see fear get down to 17 on this trend, starting to trend back up now, which is a good sign because that is shaping up to break out bullish from this overall longer term flag pattern. But anyway, nonetheless, we do see a cycle between fear and greed correlate with price. So after setting fear in the overall crypto fear and greed index, we are now starting to see potential for a much stronger breakout, which does mean a lot more upside as we do start to trend up towards that greed and euphoric state. So the other really nice thing that we actually like about this chart right now is the establishment of this 50-period EMA on this weekly as a very nice support for the close on these weeklies. Obviously had a little bit of wick dipping below that and some shadows that did cross below. But like we mentioned, especially after forming a higher low here on the price, as well as maintaining 50-period EMA support on this weekly for the close, very good signs now. And we do look to top a close on top of the previous close here, looking at 64,251. Now, because we actually never had a full bearish cross here on the weekly between the 12 and 26 period EMAs, that's an extremely strong sign as well, especially after bouncing off this 50. But we are going to be looking up overhead at a big potential level of closing resistance here coming in at 68,395. And especially previously, we did look at a huge rejection off the 70,000 line. So we are going to need to see prices top out 70,000. And that'll be the next extremely strong move here on this overall Bitcoin and crypto chart. Now, I do want to pull up some technicals here on this weekly chart, specifically looking at RSI and stochastic RSI. I want to actually look at RSI first. Huge, great bullish thing right now on this is that we did get overextended. And then as you can see, this yellow line is the moving average for the RSI. So once we actually cross bearish here, and let's clean this up. Once we actually crossed bearish here, you can see that we were trending now below this the exponential moving average here for this RSI. So now that we actually are forming this cross right here, we're going to see that as a sign of a nice bullish opportunity as the RSI does start to trend back up, which would mean as long as it does stay on top of this moving average, that's going to be the next big strong signal here. Now looking at stochastic RSI as well, ever since coming up and hitting the top here back in March, did pull back and more or less we were sitting basically right under this 20 line here for the stochastic RSI. So now we are looking at a very nice, strong potential bullish cross formation here of a nice upside move. So now I actually want to look at the MACD moving average convergence and divergence. And as you can see, starting to get a little bit closer. Histogram is trending up towards the 0 line, but we know that the MACD is a little bit of a laggy indicator. Obviously a good sign on the longer term chart, though, if we do in fact get that nice bullish cross and continuation of that. So essentially what the MACD actually is since we talk about convergence and divergence, it essentially tracks whether we're seeing the price trend away from the overall moving averages, or in this case, we are trending back down to the moving averages like they are doing now, which is why the moving average does come back down. And once we see that bullish cross, basically it means the price is going away from the moving averages again. And that's why it's a good sign for a trend indicator. So right now, typical setup for this kind of scenario, we're probably going to see plenty of tests as we do see upside resistance levels. So I wouldn't expect just to see an extremely huge breakout. Obviously, anything can potentially happen in crypto land, but we're not expecting that at all, especially since we are looking at an overhead trend line for closing levels of resistance. So on the current candle, that pretty much would come in right at 67,000, which would actually be a lower high compared to what we've seen. So if we do actually break 70,000, huge, nice psychological level, topping out a trend high, and then also as well breaking this nice downtrend line. So huge target for the bulls to actually hit would be upside on that 70,000 and actually breaking out, probably just getting just shy over would be great to see, but still likely we're going to see a little bit more continuation before we actually see a huge breakout from this overall pattern here. So on this weekly, we want to talk about the upside resistance potential based off of volumes at prices overhead. So we're looking at the VPVR right now, volume profile visible range. So essentially, instead of volume based on time like on the bottom, we have volume based on price. And this is a very good indicator of resistances and supports based off previous volumes for different levels. So right now, if you look over here on the right, center point of mass for the next big leg up is going to be at 60,500 to about 60,600. So a very big point right below that 70,000 mark. So if we can actually break above 70,000 and maintain a close, that's very, very easy to continue trending since we don't have that much price action to the upside. And especially since we are trending and breaking out bullish, forming a new longer term trend that will actually increase the likelihood of a lot more bullish upside since overhead, we're not going to have that much resistance points. And then once we actually get above our current trend high right now at 73835, that is our current all-time high right now, at least on Coinbase chart anyway. So that will be a blue sky breakout and no resistances up overhead after that. Now I want to flip over and look at the monthly really quick here because a lot of great things going on, especially as you can see on the monthly, a lot of lower shadows down here, but still maintaining closing support well above this 12-period EMA on this monthly chart. So forming an extremely nice flag type pattern here, especially good sign after a very nice run up. So the fact that we didn't see a run up and an immediate rejection and pullback, great sign for longer term continuation. So a run up and a flag pattern, very nice sign. And in fact, if we want to be extremely speculative, let's go ahead and look at a potential target for an upside based on typical targets for these type of bull flag patterns. So we go from the bottom to the top of the overall move and then potentially where the breakout would be. So if we look at the upside, we would be looking at about 113. So potentially if we do see the next huge breakout over the next month or two, we could be looking at a potential longer term of about 113. Time for that would actually be May 2025. So not anytime soon since this is the monthly chart. Plenty of time to see that play out. But overall, if we do get a very nice breakout and a lot of favorable things here on the global scale, then that could be a very nice target and obviously potential calls for higher than that. But just based on a target for the current setup and pattern on the flag right now, that would be what we are looking at right around 113 to 115, potentially just shy of 120. So now I want to pull up technicals for this monthly chart as well. And just like we were talking about the change in trend for the RSI and the moving average for the RSI, same thing applies to the longer term chart. So as you can see on the last bull cycle move, we actually pulled back, crossed bearish below the move, and more or less it was downside, but a big longer term trend indicator from there. So that's going to be a very big sign to look at when we do have a big, nice bullish move here and kind of a topping indicator for overall that. And so essentially right now, what we're looking at is essentially since we've had our nice bullish cross, maintaining the RSI on top of the moving average here for the RSI. And right now did have a brief dip below it, which you'll see happen sometimes, especially since we don't have candles for support and all of that. But anyway, so we look at the overall moving average, still maintaining support on top of it. So as long as we don't actually reject and see this go lower, that's going to be a very good sign for longer term growth to be able to establish and maintain support for this RSI on top of the moving average right now, especially if we can continue to see some upside movement and have this rise once again and have a little bit more of that divergence from this overall moving average. That'll be a very, very good sign for longer term continuation and a lot more upside growth from there. Now flipping over into the daily time frame, can't neglect the daily time frame, especially shorter. What we're looking at right now is extremely good on the daily time frame and some of the shorter term charts right now, especially because if we do look mostly at these exponential moving averages, we were sitting in a bearish cross formation ever since the beginning of August here when we had this huge extreme capitulation and obviously this big capitulation candle to kind of lock in the bottom. Had a very nice bullish break, but obviously rejected pretty quickly here. And after that, we did see a pullback maintaining these exponential moving averages. But now, like we talked about, broke this trend high, very good sign. And then also because we have been holding this level for quite some time now, and if we actually want to look at the amount of days we've been holding currently, we're looking at about 8 days so far of being able to maintain about above the $60,000 price support, over 62,000. And so essentially what this did is allow these exponential moving averages to form a bullish cross finally, where we do have the 12, the 26, and the 50 on bottom. And so essentially right now, if we actually look at the volume down over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot more bullish buying than we have actually on these pullback moves, especially recently. So not a lot of selling interest, especially after we have had our peak bearish volume come in. And so right now, changing the trend is going to start to change some of the mindsets and the overall sentiment. So that's one of the things that we're slowly starting to change, which is kind of another reason why we can't actually see a huge just explosion without some extremely good bullish catalyst news coming in. So overall, things are setting up very nicely for Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto space. I will be doing a lot more different altcoin analysis here coming up soon, so make sure you are staying tuned and subscribe to the channel if you're not just yet. Also appreciate hitting the thumbs up like button if you have not done so just yet. It does mean so much. That is going to wrap it up for now, though, so stay safe, take care. Make sure to drop any questions, comments, feedback in the section below, and I will catch you back in the next video.